Alright, what is up, guys? In this episode here, we're going to be doing a few things throughout. I listed some things that we're going to be doing, and some of them are organizing the files. Alright, when I say organizing, I mean getting our app.js, not our app, our server.js file cleared out a bit because it has like a lot of code in it. We're going to be building out our schema using the mind map that we created in episode 3. This is going to be our app schema that we're going to be using. So we're going to be using that to help us build out what we need and what we don't. We're going to be creating some resolvers for those, and we're going to be testing out our endpoints. Testing out our queries in GraphiQL. Okay, it's like the same thing we did last time when we used the sample data, but this time we're going to be using ours, and we're going to be creating our schema and using our data. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing throughout this episode. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to exit out that, and here I have the app running on localhost 5000 here. I'm going to pull up the app right now. This is where we left off. We had everything in our server.js file. Now we need to organize this and get this file looking a little bit more cleaner. Alright, so what I did is that I created a schema.js file, right? Some of the stuff I had already did, but I had to stop the video and restart it. So that's why you saw that code right there already. And the schema file is already there. So one thing we got to do is that we got to transform our build schema and all the data and all that stuff into our schema.js file, okay? So the thing we got to do is that we got to make sure we import this inside of our schema.js because we're going to be using that. We need to take our actual schema and you can put that with the schema.js. We could delete that from there. We need our dummy data, but we're going to turn this dummy data into our data. It's still like a test data, but it's going to be representing our data instead of sample data like the from the last episode. So then we're going to transfer our resolver over there as well. Alright, get that all over there. So now we can delete it from here, and we can delete our dummy data from here. We don't need that in this section anymore, and we can get rid of that because we don't need that in our section anymore. And now our server.js file is looking more cleaner. What we got to do though is that we got to import our schema and our resolver into the server.js so our schema can recognize it, right? Because we don't have these imported, so they don't recognize what they are. So let's grab those. I'm going to destructure it so I can just get the actual grab the values right out of our file. We got resolver equals require. We're going to take that right out of our schema, and now it should be recognized now. Our resolver to that, to this resolver, and our schemas to this. Now the only way you'll know if they recognize is if you hover over it. Oh wait. Oh yeah, we didn't export this. Okay, so we gotta export these, our schema and the resolver, so we can use them in our server files. Okay. So down here, that's probably the code that you saw before. Module.exports. I'm gonna export an object that has both the R schema in it. Oh wait. And our resolver. Okay. So we exported them both. So now it should be recognized. And if you hover over it, yep, our schema says the GraphiQL schema, and if you hover over the resolver, it's the same resolver as in our schema.js. So that's how you know it's getting used and it's getting imported in there, okay? Now with that exported and our files looking clean, the next thing we got to do is that we got to build out our schema. So ours is the notes, our EverNote schema, okay? So we got to build out that. So the first thing we could do is get our schema looking like it could be ours, looking like the EverNote. So we're going to change this people into notes, and each note, when you query for the notes, is going to return an array of notes. So we'll note, return an array of note, right? We could change this person into a note, and then change the first name into the title, because the notes are going to have title and crap. I'm going off just by looking at it. I didn't even go to my mind map. Grab that here. Oh, okay. Oh yeah, an image. Okay. So this is our this is the mind map we had created in episode 3, part 2, I believe. And then we created, what it'll look like in like GraphiQL. So the EverNote will have a title, description, and string. But now that I'm thinking about it, I may change this to content, like that, instead of description, because the note has content in it. Yeah, okay. So we're gonna change that to content. Sounds a little bit more better instead of description. And then you got the image. Image is gonna be a string, I believe. I still haven't looked up on how GraphQL works with images. I still haven't looked that up yet. I will though. We'll do the login and the registers after we get the basic CRUD operations working on our notes. So now when you want to, now we got to think of like the functionalities the notes will have, because you can delete a note, you can create a note, and you really don't have to update it. I don't think I have to make a mutation for that. But when it comes to mutations are basically what you want to modify and everything. So I would say that it's mostly for well, in our case, it's for handling the CRUD operations, which is update, create, and delete, because the read comes from here when you're reading all of the notes. But if you want to create a note, that's a mutation. If you want to update a note, that's a mutation. Delete a note, mutation. So all of the rest of the mutations are going to go in the mutation type. And the read comes from, querying the notes and getting the notes back, getting the array of notes back. So when you want to add a note, we can say add note. Or I actually want to name it create note. Create note. Okay. Then you have the functionalities of delete note. I don't think we need update right now. We'll just go with these two, and then I'll check back to see if we actually need update. And then once you create a note, the input, you can call this anything. You don't have to call this input because of this. You can call it, note input. And then it'll be an object of whatever you put in here. So it'll be an object of title content in the image that we said, because we can drag and drop images in there, so we can put images string. Okay, so then we won't call it person input, we'll call it we can call this whatever we want to. We can call it note input, like that. I'll copy that, paste it there. And then once you create that note, whatever input, whatever values you give it, it should return that note. Not an array of notes, but it should return that note that you just created. And it's only one note that you're going to create at a time. So it should turn that single note that you just created. So it should return a note, which is an object. Yeah. And then the ID will automatically, be added in there. Yeah. So we got the create, and then you got the delete. When you delete a node, you need to know their ID of whichever one you're deleting. So you need to pass in an ID that's type ID, which comes from GraphiQL. And then once you delete that node, what do you want to return? You basically want to return that whole note that you just deleted, so you'll know that it's deleted. So return that note you just deleted. Return that note. That way you'll know it's been deleted, okay? And these are just describing the mutations and describing what you want to return after that mutation. And then, like I said, the resolvers actually handle that and returns the data that you said that it wanted to return. Okay, just a refresher of what resolvers are. You can query for notes. You can get a single note. Grab a single note by its ID, right? So note, and the ID is going to be ID. So whatever note you pass in, whatever ID you pass in, it should give you back that note of whatever ID you put in there. Like, for example, we only got one now. So if I was to put 1 as the ID here, it should return this whole object with the note of 1. So it should return all of this whole object here. Okay? Just like when you create a note. When you create a note with the inputs here, it should return a note that looks like this. A single note, because that's what the note looks like. It looks like that. So it should return this. It'll look like an object with the note. Okay? Now, let me change this to match. Image should be some image. Okay. Alright, so we basically got our notes going here. Our note schema so far. So we want to have, now the resolver has to match it. So resolver has to have notes, just like here. And it's going to return an array of notes. So we're going to say that it returns the dummy notes that we have right now. Oh, I called it data. Call it notes. So it's going to turn the dummy notes. And then the add person is actually going to be create note. And then it's going to take in the input. And then when you create a note, you got to create an object with all the note data that you want to create, right? So instead of this being person, it'll be note. The ID is going to be data.length. should be note.length, notes.length. So whatever, how many notes are in there, that's going to be the ID. And then you want to increment that. So you do +1 to make sure it increments. I tried doing plus, but that didn't seem to work. So I was like, okay. So I'll do +1. Okay. And then they will have the title and the content. Oh yeah, and the and the image. Okay. Now the values here is basically saying when you do input, I'm not sure if I explained that before, but when you do input, it's referring to like these inputs. Like when you say input, you're grabbing the input dot title. See if we put title here. Title, content, let me do it out so you can actually see. Input.image. Okay. So when you do input, you're grabbing this input from what you passed in here. Okay. So I'm not sure if the name makes a difference. I think I have to call it exactly what it is. So I called it note input, just so you can see it better. Like that. Let's check and see if that's working. Okay, yes. Looks like it's working. Okay. So when you do no input, it's grabbing it straight from this right here. Okay, and no input comes, it's going to have this value. So when you do no input dot whatever the value is, so whatever string is, whatever title is, the no input dot content, no input dot image. So that's basically what you're doing. You're just grabbing the parameters you passed in. You're just grabbing the input straight on from the parameters. I hope that makes sense. And then what you got to do is you got to push this object to the notes like we did before. Notes, push on that note, return notes. Yeah. So when you create a note, you're storing it in a note variable, and then the notes, which is our data up here, you're pushing onto this array with the new note you just created. And this all comes from the mutation that you specified. Okay? So it should return a single note. Since it should return a single note, it should actually return the note that you created. Like that. Not notes, because notes is the array. We didn't say that it was going to return an array. We said that it was going to return a single note, so it has to return a single note, which is this object. Alright? So let's see if that works. So we go to mutation, go to note, pass in the params. Now you got to do note input, because that's what we called it, right? And then we said that we were going to pass in the title, which is this is a title, and then the content, and we said that my content, put something in there, and then the image was going to be this. Something like that, right? And then once you pass in those parameters, right, you want to mutation is called create note. That's why. Okay, so when you create a note, you pass in the object of the fields that you, what the values are basically, okay? So once you create that note, you get a note back, right? And I want from that note that I get back, which is an object with all the notes, I want to get back the ID from that note that you just created. Okay. Now I want to get back the title of that note I just created. Yep, this is the title. Yep, so it's getting back all the stuff that you just created. I want to get back the content. No, image. My image, yay. Okay, see? You see that it's working. The ID seems to be going up every time I click something. Oh, because every time I click the play button, I'm creating the same note every time I click the play button. Even though I'm grabbing data back from it, I'm creating the note again. So that's why the ID is 4. So if I go to all my notes, I should have 4 objects with the note that has the same content in it, because I just created it 4 times. I forgot. Okay. I forgot it does that. Okay, so notes. I'm going to do that. See, it got all 4, and all of it's going to say the same thing because I created it 4 times. Yeah, okay. Still has Tim in there, I forgot. Okay. But it is working though. So, say like I want to get a single note. Let's see if our query to a single note is working. So a single note, you have to pass in an ID, and that ID has to be whatever note that you're trying to get. So say like I want to get the first one. I don't think I made a resolver for that. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think I made a resolver for it. Let's see if it works. Oh, without these. No, okay. Because I didn't create the resolver for the single note. I didn't create the resolver. Okay. So, gotta go back here and create a note. And it's gonna return it's gonna return the note. No, the notes with the ID that you specify -1. Yeah. And if you guys don't know what that means, I'll explain it in a second, because let me see. ID is not defined. Let me see. Let's see. So what it's doing here, oh yeah, because I gotta pass the parameters in there, that's why. So if I grab the ID, because we specified the params has to have the ID in it. So we grab that ID out of the params from here, and then we do ID -1. So let's see if that works. Yep, we get the first one. Now get instead of the ID back, get the title back from that note. Yeah, okay. Now grab the ID, because I can't tell which one is what. Okay. Alan, okay. Yeah, so the reason why I did 1 is that since arrays are 0 based, if I was to put 0 for the ID, then it will show me 1. But I don't people don't start off with 0 when they do IDs. But by the array being 0 based, it throws it off. So that's why I put whatever ID you put in there. Say like you put 1, because you want to grab the first one. And then you do 1 minus 1 is 0. So it will automatically grab the first one if you put 1 in there. So it's kind of like a mathy thing going there. But if you test it out, I had to test it out with a calculator. But if you test it out and think about it, it actually does make sense. Okay? So we basically got our schema for our nodes down. It looks like all of our all of our queries are working. We queried for all of the nodes, which we got. We queried for a single node by the ID that we specified, which we got. We did the create note mutation, and that created us a note, and pushed that note that we created to the notes data that we stored up here, which was good. And then we haven't did the delete functionality. The delete functionality will come easier once we start getting Mongo in there. But, the delete functionality would be the same way. You pass in the ID, you delete that node with that given ID, and then it returns that note that you just deleted. So that's what the delete functionality will do. That'll all make sense once we start getting our hands dirty with the database, okay? And I think we might get into the database in the next episode. I'm pretty sure we're probably ready, possibly. We could either get into the database in the next episode or do our login and our register data and functionality. But that might take a little bit more. That may be a little bit more on the complex because we're going to do the auth and all that stuff. So we might hold off on that. We will get to it, but we might hold off on that. We might want to do the CRUD operations, get that all done and straightened out, and then we'll probably work on the login and the register. Like I said, they have the most complexity in it because it's auth and authorization and all that stuff. So we'll get to that, but that probably won't be next. What should be next is getting MongoDB started. Start putting this in the actual database and whatnot. Getting that going, getting the images, figuring out how we're going to do images. It's probably simple. I'm probably overthinking it, but figure out how we're going to do images and all that stuff, and we should be good to go. So that's the plan for the next episode. It's getting MongoDB started and getting the CRUD operations going. And this, instead of it being static like this, it'll actually be calling our database once we get all that in the next episode. So that's the plan, and I will see you guys in the next one.